So, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining today. I'm really stoked to have with me the one and only, the most enthusiastic guy in sales and marketing, the guy who brought us Smarketing. I've got Dan Tyre on the line. Dan, how are you doing?
Simon, I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Super excited to be a guest today and talk with you about how we can help people.
Absolutely, no, fantastic. And I think it's a good time to speak because there is a lot of things happening in the world at the moment. I know it's everyone's talking about it, but there's certainly been downturns in the industry before. There's been different crises. I remember selling 2008 in software sales. There's a whole lot of different things happening there as well. But I guess, just to kick things off, what type of things have you seen, Dan? What's the biggest challenges you've seen for some customers now trying to get out there and continue business as normal?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting time for individuals, for families, for communities, for industries, and for companies. And we have seen that there's three major areas for whole entire industries. There's some industries that are in survive mode. And if you're running a travel company or events company, if you have a brick or mortar store, like a restaurant, there's no question. It's virtually impossible to continue to do business the way you've done for possibly years and years and years. But there's a whole segment of the economy that's now in adapt mode. And I would say that most businesses fall into that category. And that has been operations that have been impacted, but not decimated. And these companies, they've stabilized after the initial shock. And now they need to make investments in strengthening their online presence and pipeline generation. And they are adapting to what we call the new normal. They tend to be technology companies, software companies, professional services, channel sales, but amazing kind of things, right? Sometimes it takes a crisis to really see the ingenuity and innovation of business owners, especially entrepreneurs. And I've seen some amazing companies adapt. There is a massage company here in the United States. They do corporate massages. It's called In Corporate Massage, right? And I followed the company for a while. I've been an investor and served on their board of directors. And we have 1,200 massage therapists across North America. We had a furlough nearly all of the massage therapists at the beginning of March, but they chose to adapt. They now have a stress management virtual option where if you're cooped up with your family, right, you can cycle in and they'll run through stress management options for you so that you're not all at each other's throat during the pandemic. And I thought how are you going to take a massage company and turn it virtual? And somehow Amelia and Paul did, which is amazing. And there are dozens, no, there are hundreds, no, there are thousands of examples of people saying, no, this is how we're going to do it. I ran a couple of webinars worldwide last week about how to move your face-to-face sales team over to remote. And you must know companies that have face-to-face sales teams, right, Simon?
Hey, look, I must admit, probably about 80% of the clients we work with all have some sort of element of field sales for sure.
I know. It's been like 20 years since I've got my car. Well, first of all, I got to take a shower. Then I have to put on a shirt. And then I have to drive. And remember maps? You used to have a map or before you had it on your phone. And then you'd go see them. But there's whole industries, whole companies where their sales team goes from company to company, right, and visits and talks and provides samples and talks about the quality of the whatever they're selling, that kind of stuff. And I just had neglected to think about that for years and years. Those people are now all online. And what I found is the senior executives of those kind of companies were concerned that when their sales team moved to remote or online, that they wouldn't quite work as hard. Their productivity would go down. They wouldn't have the visibility of going face to face. And nothing would be further from the truth, right? When you work virtually, work remotely, right, you work twice as hard, right? You get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. You work until late at night because you just have the availability of doing it. And so explaining to them the tools, explaining to them the philosophy, explaining to them the collaboration kind of characteristics and the way in which you should schedule the meetings was completely eye-opening. And then to complete the story about the major categories, you have companies that are survival. Oh, by the way, if companies are surviving, you can still help them. Right. One of the unintended consequences of our current situation is that everybody's picking up the phone. Right. So I made 100 calls over the weekend. 2 weekends ago, I made another 100 calls, and everybody, unless they're on another call, which they text you back, say I'm on another call, everybody picks up. And the questions are pretty much the same. Number one, how are you doing? And unlike previously in the United States, we're listening. I really want to know, how are you doing, Simon? And then I always ask what I asked you. Number one, are you safe? Are you healthy? Right? And if you're in survival mode, you can always say, what can I do to help? Right? And sometimes just talking with somebody, getting out of the isolation, just having another human being listen to you is a huge advantage. Right? No. Then we start talking about the categories: survive, adopt, and then there is a huge section of the economy that's actually in growth phase, which I didn't really understand until about 2 weeks in. But businesses in that category, they're exploding. E-commerce, e-learning, on-demand gaming, fitness, IT services. If you don't have your internet in April and May of 2020, you are not in good shape. And those kind of companies hadn't thought a lot about their online presence. Now they do. Now they need to understand and manage through the growth, right? They need to understand how they're going to deal with an influx of 10x. Some of the information I've seen, some companies 6 to 8 to 10 times the amount of inquiries that they've had before. And of course, that has an equally challenging impact on your business.
Of course, well, the complexity there as well. No, you're absolutely right. And it's not something I really thought about too much, but when was the last time you could get hold of everybody for 10 hours of every working day and know they're going to be at their computer and you could reach out and get the attention needed right there and then? I mean, this has been the first time, I think, over the last 3 or 4 weeks that, I've been able to get any member of my team. I've been able to have numerous conversations, multiple conversations with each of my clients. So it certainly has changed everything. But,
and the other thing is they want to talk. It's not that they want to have a deep conversation, and it's somehow different, right? It's a lot more human. You want to know about their families, right? In the old days, you kind of wanted to know, the old days was 3 months ago. You kind of wanted to know their families, but now you're like, okay, where's your kid? Are they at university? All right. Is everybody safe? How's your mom? And all of those kind of things lead to a global community where it's humans first. Right. Mm-hmm. And the reason that always makes me smile is the foundation of the inbound organization and the inbound philosophy has always been helping, not selling. Right. Yeah. For the first 30 years of my business career, I hate to tell you this, I was kind of a pushy salesperson. Right. I was the master of the universe. I would say, Simon, is this a priority for you? Is this budgeted for you to purchase this quarter? And it was a little annoying to you, but you didn't have a choice because I had all the information. Right. I had all of the data. If you wanted to know whether you could fit it in the back of your truck, if you could get it up the stairs, if it was purple, I was the only guy who could tell you. Right. So you had to answer my question. Obviously, with the emergence of search engines, Google, social media, that's changed significantly, right? And the balance of power has moved from the sales funnel over to what we call the flywheel, or over to the buyer, right? I wrote a book about that called The Inbound Organization that I have on my desk all the time. But now when the foundation for inbound is, there's some core tenets. Number one, you treat people like human beings, which it sounds like it shouldn't be that hard. But when you think of modern marketing methods, modern sales methods, sometimes you're like, how could somebody send me a spam email? How could somebody send me a non-customized email? How could somebody say something that toned down? Right. Number two, you add value before you extract value. And that is huge. And I know you've always had that philosophy, right? I've heard tons of times you say, no, we'll just help them. And sometimes when people are new to this philosophy, they're like, what do you mean? You're just going to help me? I'm like, I'm just going to help. I'm going to give you free stuff. And they're like, why? they're skeptical. And I'm like, no, that's just the way we do it. And they're like, I don't know. Why are you giving me free stuff? And you can give free stuff to people because you want to earn their trust, or you could just do it because you want to do it. It's the right thing to do. And then the third foundation is to provide the right information to the right person at the right time, right? That takes a little bit of nuance, but still super important, right? You and I have talked many times, the riches are in the niches. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You could quote me on that. Like a million people said it before me, but it's never been more pertinent than 2020. And there's a reason for that, right? As we've continued to see the evolution of specialization, right? You want somebody who can solve your problem more effectively and more quickly than anyone else. And somebody who's familiar with your location, familiar with your geography, familiar with your industry, familiar with your seasonality, with your vocabulary, is naturally going to bond a little bit more quickly and add a little bit more value. So focusing towards the right type of company where you can add the most value is also one of the foundations. Niche beats general or broad all the time. And those kind of qualities really emerge when everybody's sheltered at home and when we're going through these kind of situations as like a foundation for starting a relationship, not selling. The reason why people are picking up the phone is they desperately want to talk to another human being, right? You could be the tax collector and they'd still want to talk with you, right? And they crave that human interaction, which is sometimes hard when you're isolated. And they want to understand where they are. And now you're seeing lots of examples of the green sprouts of what happens after the initial kind of wave, and super excited about seeing all the innovation and excitement that's going to come from it.
I mean, talking about niches and going down to being really specialist in a particular place, there's obviously a lot of companies out there, whether professional services, in the tech industry, software companies, everybody's out there. A lot of them will have a lot of verticals that they can sell into. They'll not just be into one particular sector. So, I mean, when would be the right time to sort of niche down, to really focus in on a specific segment of the market? Is it too late to start doing that now, or should we have been doing that before, or for people who are trying to make a change now, ramp up the pipeline, should they start doing it now?
So here's the thing: you can't really go back and change the past, so there's it's not worth obsessing over it. But lots of times, these type of very unusual circumstances force us to do stuff that we probably should have done in the past. Right. And if you're in survival mode, you don't have a choice. If you want to continue in business, right. And I'm incredibly encouraged by the amazing entrepreneurs that I see globally who are doing amazing things to pivot so that they can continue to develop their businesses. Right. Then if you're selling into an industry that's in survival mode, you have to pick a new industry. And I have dozens of friends in the agency partner world or the solutions partner world that were selling into travel and leisure, and they just have to pick a new vertical, and they have to research that vertical. They have to understand the vertical. They have to go in and do hours and hours of research, right? But they'll become familiar with it. And hopefully they'll look back and say this was a seminal pivot in the growth of our agency, where we were able to broaden into a new area that we had considered previously, but had kind of lagged because we were either too busy or we had other priorities. And if you're in adapt mode, right, you want to take a little bit of a time to understand where you are today, the resources and experience of the people on your staff, and how you think those businesses are going to grow, right? A lot of focus now on logistics and delivery, right, which is a very complex business, which a lot of didn't do a lot of digital marketing previously, and now is at the forefront of how do I get all my essentials delivered to my different locations quickly and efficiently. So that's an example of a whole new market that is just opening up, and really everybody has the same kind of opportunity to go after it. So I think it always makes sense to take an assessment What we tell all of our business owners is you always should have a spreadsheet that focuses on your revenue and expenses. And in the 5 startups that I've done, one of them actually went bankrupt because I didn't have a formal plan that said this is the expenses and revenue that's coming in. So that was one of the seminal updates in my business career, right? Taught me business planning, taught me a little bit about humility, and it taught me always have a spreadsheet that said, okay, this is what my expectation is for revenue. That's my forecast. This is how much we're going to spend to get that revenue. And then in times of transition, you want to take scenarios of what would happen if I lost 25% of my business, lost 50% of my business, lost 75% of my business. What does that mean? You accomplish a couple of things there. Number one, it makes it less scary. When you have a spreadsheet that shows you the implications of what happens, now it's not a mystery anymore. Now you know, all right, well, if this happens, then this happens. Number two, it gives you a realistic expectation of what you need to do to recover it. Right? If you're going to lose 25% of your business, you got a choice. You can either downsize 25% if you want to save profit margins, or you can go out and get 25% new business, just like we were talking about. And number three, it helps you understand the realities of priorities of what needs to be done first, right? And in those situations, I found that having a black and white spreadsheet broken down by month that says this is the implication for the rest of the year is a huge advantage for anyone who's a business leader.
That makes sense. And I guess what one simple element there is for a lot of people listening is going to be, don't bury your head in the sand. Put it in black and white. See everything.
Yes, and as an advisor to dozens of companies, I will say it's not necessarily a deficiency. It's that people haven't gone through the same situation that I have, where after 5 startups, right, understanding that always having a plan, especially in times of transition or turmoil, super important, because now you just work by the plan. And human nature being what it is, people say, well, I'll just do what I always done. But by definition, you can't, right? Because you're unable to understand the implications until you've actually done it. If you have 3 scenarios, now you're picking one of the 3 rather than just winging it. Right. And now you have to make those tough decisions that are in black and white based on the evidence that's presented to you.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And on that topic, I guess, of looking at different projections and different scale, when we talk about going a little bit deeper down from a company level into an actual sales rep or a sales manager perspective, and we start looking at KPIs and maybe your forecasts have kind of just gone out of the window for a while. What do you think you should start with there? I mean, do you think we should lead with what you're saying there with, right now we should have 3 forecasts, a worst case, a most likely, and a best case? Do we adjust the types of, I suppose, activity metrics we might be chasing? Because a lot of people will be looking, of course, at how many calls we're making, meetings we're doing, all the activities. What do you think from a KPI perspective?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and it is much, much different. Number one, it's not so much about business KPIs, how much deal creation you're creating, how much business you're closing. It's all about how many relationships you're starting. It's the foundation of the inbound philosophy, right? And if you start a relationship in April 2020, people will never forget it. You give something free, right? And Simon, you have dozens of things that you can give to to anybody for free. You can give them HubSpot Academy. You can give them the Make My Persona tool. You can give them a website grader. You can give them a free software. Right? It's amazing, right? The freemium motion that HubSpot's established years ago allows you to provide free software to businesses, right? To help them grow better. That's amazing. And I got to say, sometimes people are a little skeptical. They're like, why are you giving me free stuff? I'm like, that's just the way they do it. And this is really good stuff. And I've had people in airports they're like, Tyre, I hate to tell you, I've been in the inbound ecosystem for 10 years, but I've never given you any money. And we're like, no, that's all right. And they're like, no, but I never give you any money. I'm like, it's not all about the money. It's about you being a good person, understanding that spam is horrible, that cold calling is not worth it, and that we want to try to change and innovate around the ways that businesses grow better. That means as salespeople, that means as business leaders, that means as industries, right? And part of that is to provide the ground, like the infrastructure of how to grow. One of my observations in 2019 is that every business is a tech business, right? It used to be that like if you were a nonprofit or something like that, technology wasn't that important. But we've reached the point with the SaaS revolution that every business is a tech business. And so even if you're a nonprofit, even if you're a zoo, right, you have to have a CRM, you have to have ways to communicate with your customers, you have to have ways to communicate with net new business. But you asked a very important question about the KPIs. KPIs are different. Now it's how many people are you talking to, how many conversations you're starting, and you're going to let your customer drive. If they're in survival mode, all they want to do is talk about like the things that are important in their life, that's still a public service. If they're in adopt mode, it's likely that they have to move quickly to understand how they can manage through the situation. And if they're in growth mode, it's like, I need somebody to stand up this, to take advantage of this ASAP. And in those situations, there's ways you can help. So it's lessening the formal kind of categories that you have. It's not about deal creation. HubSpot published in last week the aggregate information that we've seen as it relates to companies' websites of about 70,000 companies worldwide. And first of all, internet activity up about 25%. So we see lots more people online, which that makes sense, right? You're at home. Yeah, exactly. What are you going to do, right? There's no sports to watch. You can only walk your dog like 3 or 4 times a day, right? And so you're going to be online. Deal creation is down, right? Which is to be expected, but it's only down about 23%, right? Which, I don't know, I tend to be a little bit of an optimist, but I'm amazed because that shows that there's lots of business still being done, right? That we haven't ground to a halt, that actually lots of people are adapting and growing. And that has a strong implication to the fact that we're going to manage through this in a very positive fashion.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of people are going to be dealing with sales environments where it's going to be a long sales cycle anyway. And I guess it's following the best practice, keep sticking to the lead nurturing, provide that educational content. And deals quite often they might be on hold a little bit, but they're not gone. They're not gone.
That's right. And queues in 2020, you can't get a customer to move before they want to move, right? It requires you as a sales professional just to ask the right question. And one of the greatest questions that I've ever asked people, I'd be like, Simon, when do you need the customers by? And when you ask people that question, what's the answer?
Yesterday.
They always say that. They always say yesterday. I don't know why they don't say like this morning or like ASAP. They always say yesterday, which is, it must be a human thing in virtually all cultures, from Africa to the UK to Mexico. And I'm like, okay, well, then if that's the end state, one of the things that's very important in 2020 is the way we solve problems, we start with the goals and work backwards. Right. And I saw this starting to emerge earlier in the century when I did a lot of work in Houston. And the business people in Houston used to sit me down and say, Tyre, if you don't know what you're hunting, don't bother getting off the porch. Right. Which is it's very non-UK. I don't know if your listeners will have any idea what I'm talking about, but Houston is the oil and gas capital of the United States, potentially the world. And there are a lot of homespun wisdom. Right. And people would show up at these meetings with Stetson hats, with cowboy hats, right, in like a regular meeting. Right. Yeah. And they would have a belt buckle the size of a hubcap. It was amazing. Right. And these guys would just look at me. And they talk with a southern drawl, and I'd be like chatting away like I am today. And they thought I had like 3 cups of Guatemalan coffee, and they were always very interested, always very kind. And they taught me a valuable lesson in that really the key to solving a problem is figuring out what you want first and then working backwards. Right. And so understanding that this is the goal. Right. When people say, all right, I'm like interested in HubSpot, I'm like, great. For what? And they're like, no. What I want to do is I want to implement this. I'm like, great. If you don't understand your goals, right, there's no way we can number one, know if it'll work for you. Number two, understand the speed of acceleration of deployment. And number three, it's a little bit different. If you want 3 customers as opposed to 30, as opposed to 300, as opposed to 3,000. So the ability to start with the goals and work backwards has been seminal, right? It's been one of the foundations of the way we solve problems at HubSpot. And I think will be like one of the good business tenets moving forward into the future.
Yeah, and I guess from our own personal experience as an agency, I mean, the one thing you don't really want to hear too much when you try to find out what kind of scale of growth the customer is looking for is, well, look, hey, I'm happy to put a certain amount of budget in, and when we grow and we get more customers, I'll put even more budget in. We want to grow as much as we can, and it's a very open-ended goal, and it's always very, very frustrating when you hear that. So yeah, it really helps if you can get that number, as finely tuned as you can before you go into these kind of new pipeline conversations.
Yeah, that's a holdover from the generation before you were a business owner, right? In the old days, you paid me for the services that I provide. That's not the way it works now. Now you pay me for the results I get, right? And that has been a transition over the last several years, right? Like the transformation of the agency world is quite extraordinary. In the old days, when the internet first started, digital marketing agencies were very, very hot, right? And people call you up, say, I need a website. I need it in the next 2 weeks. Here's like 100,000, just build one. And it was the glory years because people had to stand it up, and speed and acceleration was more important than like quality. And so that worked until about 2007. And then it was the birth of the inbound revolution. Now people didn't want a website. Now people wanted leads, right? They wanted people to drop contact information. And if you ran an agency that was an inbound organization that would allow you to get leads, then you are in very high demand, right? And that was the judge. Today, it's not just leads, right? Today, they want customers, right? So when you cycle in, and if we're working with somebody who doesn't know how many customers they want and the average customer size and how much revenue they want to generate, then it's unlikely to be a good relationship, because you have to understand the dynamics of what we're aiming for, what we're shooting for. Then if you're generating $1 million of incremental business, it's easy to sit down and say, all right, you want to get 10 new customers that will generate $1 million of incremental revenue. Do I have that right? And they'll be like, yeah. You're like, okay, well, how many proposals do you need to get 10 new customers? And they'll say 20. I'm like, do you know that as a fact? Do you have the data on that? Do you have the data on that by salespeople, by sales team, by region? And they're like, no, but I think it's about 50%. I go, the first thing you need to do is get the data and the facts. It's another foundation of inbound organization, right? We always lead with analysis of data rather than anything else. And then I'm like, all right, you need 20 proposals to get 10 customers. Let's just guess. By the way, next year I want the specific number, right? And dice it by size and vertical. How many opportunities do you need to be involved in to create 20 proposals? Right? And they're like, wow, Tyre, that's a great question. I'm like, let's just do an educated guess now. Go back, talk to your salespeople, say how many of the opportunities turned to proposal at what time. And then to have that many opportunities, let's say you need 100 opportunities. How many conversations do you need to have to get 100 opportunities? Let's say that's 200. And then the final part of the reverse funnel analysis is how many leads do you need to get to that number of conversations, that number of opportunities, that number of proposals, that number of customers, that number of revenue. And now it's all laid out. That's what we call customer acquisition. That is not insignificant, but just like you have a plan for the growth of your business, now you have a plan for how you're going to hit your incremental sales number. And if that includes pivoting to a new demographic or a new region or a new product or a new industry, then you can work back from that. Now you know what you're going for. You know why you're getting off the porch. You know exactly what you want. Now it behooves you as the agency owner to say, okay, can we get these kind of results based on the expectation? And then how much time, effort, and money, right, is it going to take us to get it? It's a whole different equation driven by the fact that we now have all the data and analysis to understand the best way to solve the problem.
And I suppose using those numbers and starting to know exactly how many people you need to effectively prospect to, I mean, obviously we've seen it change, this transition in sales anyway. And I know you and I have been involved. I've been on some of your training sessions. I was saying before the call, I've had some of my sales guys over the years jumping onto the Lions training session things. But I think that the biggest thing and the most valuable lessons that we've had has been this whole move to video selling. So, for years, and even before I was an agency owner, in my days of software sales, yeah, it was the phone, it was email. We obviously, did the usual things. But now it's then changed into, then your email sequences, your outreach, and then we've now put video on top of that. And I know from our perspective, we've certainly just canned all of those outreach methods we had, even 2 years, 3 years ago. We're now saying, video outreach, we're spending obviously a lot more time doing it. Of course, it takes more time to craft them. It's more personalized, but the response is something in the region of 10 to 20 fold better than what it was, doing normal emails and phone follow-ups. So I suppose from your perspective, what the companies need to do in terms of their sales teams taking a new approach to prospecting?
Yeah, so video email has been around for a long time, but in the old days, you had to click on a link and go to a separate server to run it. And people were skeptical about that because they saw it as a potential security risk and didn't want to take the link. The change has been the chiclet, where I can actually see a picture of you and that globe, and it looks like that plant behind you needs a little bit of water there, Simon. So you might want to check it out. But you're exactly right. I know. I want to see my friend Simon, right, dressed in his black shirt, right? I want to see you now. It's amazing. We live in the future. This is like Harry Potter, right? Now, if I send you a text email, you're like, this is a text or email. If I send you a video email with the big Dan Tyre energy, right, the crazy hair, because I've been sheltered at home for the last 30 days, you're like, wow, that's kind of interesting. Number one, it's human. Number two, I'm going to be talking all about you. And even you, Simon, who's very humble, you like when I talk about you, right? In your lizard brain, you're like, wow, this guy cared enough to do the research. He knows a little bit about me. Number three, most people like video. Every now and then you get 2 or 3 old guys who are like, I don't like video. But most people like it because you can convey a lot of information in a very short period of time. You can get this emotion, right? This kind of excitement. I can convey how pumped I am, which is usually a good thing, unless it's 5:30 in the morning and you're my 22-year-old daughter, then you're not quite so excited. Or my wife, you're like, all right, Tyre, not today. But you can express yourself a little bit better, a little bit quicker, a little bit easier. Now, you're 100% right. Over the last 2 years, video prospecting has transformed outreach. Right. And regular email has changed a lot. If you ever send an email that says, dear valued customer, right, you deserve to lose that customer. Right. And that's just the change in buyer behavior in 2020. It is much, much different. And we expect that you know who I am, what I want, even if it's the first time we talk. Right. I want you to know my situation. And it's a little irrational, but that's the expectations that we have in today's world. When I introduce video, and then I put your website on the screen. Number one, your brain is thinking, why is my website on the screen? Number two, you're seeing another human being, right, with a big smile. Do your dentist proud there, Simon. I want to see those teeth. Yep, exactly. I see the little plant. I see the globe. Now you're not a pushy salesperson. Now, it's the guy Simon in a black shirt. Right? No, he's the guy who's been sending me this information. And it is very, very human. And it is very good way to start a relationship. Human beings are social animals. We like hanging out with other human beings, right? It's one of the things that separates us as a species. And by sending that information, now I'm able to demystify and move somebody from a category of a totally business-oriented person to somebody is a much more humanistic approach that is more relevant to be able to start a relationship. And so the statistics are astounding. 400% increase, much better engagement, opening, click-through, and it's not that hard, right? Vidyard, Loom, Wistia Soapbox, HubSpot all offer free products for video email that are super easy to use. Takes a little bit of time. I'm going to say you have to practice 10 or 20 of these video emails. But if your sales organization isn't using video, then you're missing a huge opportunity. According to HubSpot's State of Agency Sales in 2019, right, only 20% of agencies are using video email. And I bet you that'll double this year. But it's a huge innovation, huge window of opportunity, huge ways to differentiate yourself, huge way to lead into the inbound revolution, and you'll get a extraordinary return on investment from it.
No, absolutely. And even from our experience, I mean, we actually sort of roll this out in phases. I mean, I think before we were fully blown into sales video prospecting, we'd already started to use video, as part of the sales cycle. I mean, one of the key scenarios would have been, when we are sending through proposal documents, and we do use nice sort of online embeddable type proposal software, but we're actually able to embed a video within the software proposal itself. It gives a nice sort of 3-4 minute run through, because we know these proposals are not going to go to just that one person. They're going to go to 3, 4, or 5 people, and they're not going to read every step of an inbound marketing proposal. They're going to watch the video and go to the pricing, and then they go. But it really changed the response we got from proposals.
I just did it's so true, Simon. I just did a show last week talking about RFPs and responding to RFPs. And in the old days, that's how people picked a vendor, because it was all about product features. And you wanted to understand, did your product, now no one cares about product features. They care about you. Does this guy, Simon, understand my industry? Does he understand my company? Does he understand what I'm trying to accomplish? Can I stand him? Is he going to be an expert? He's going to add value, right? And it's a unbelievably positive step forward, that it's no longer about just like the specifics. It's about how we can work together, right? Because marketing is everything, right? It used to be that marketing was in the doghouse all the time. Sales was like omnipotent, because marketing would create the brand, they would create leads, and you were a built-in excuse. You either created too many leads and like I didn't know which one to follow up on, or it was your fault I wasn't hitting my number because I didn't have any leads. Right. Today, marketing is customer marketing. Marketing is brand. Marketing is customer journey. Marketing is personas. Marketing is education and sales organization. And it's not sales. It's not marketing. You gave me a huge shout out for schmarketing. Say it, Simon. Say schmarketing.
It's marketing.
Yeah, there you go. Like you're from Brooklyn. Schmarketing, like the back. That's good. And it's true. Right. I invented that term with a buddy of mine by the name of Mike Volpe in 2007. We're getting drunk in Cambridge. And it's a long story, but we came up with the term. It doesn't stand for smart marketing. It's sales and marketing squished together, but it's very, very true. And there's tons of content on HubSpot and on your agency website about how to do sales and marketing alignment, because it's the right approach to take.
Hey, and it's close to my heart. I mean, I started my career in software sales, and I run a marketing agency now. So it's effectively the 2 paths in one. So it rings true to me.
I know, it's amazing. You don't look like a sales guy. You got a big heart. You understand how to help companies grow, right? I think that you're one of these new age guys that understands, number one, that you lead with value. Number two, as long as I've known you, you've understand the inbound aesthetic, which that means treat people like human beings. Right? Mm-hmm. You're a damn fine human being. You like helping people, right? Why are you like that, Simon?
I don't know, Dan. You're going to make me blush.
I know, but it's true. Like when we first started explaining, you help, not sell. You're like, of course. And even before we had the term inbound, you're like, no, that's what I like to do. And there's a subset of people who are like that. They just like to help, right? You can help people so that you can earn their trust. You can help them just because it's the right thing to help, all right thing to do, right? And that's a very defendable and valuable business philosophy in 2020, because most people prefer to work with people that they like, that are willing to help them, right? And it's less about how much money you make, more about those relationships. That's why lots of agencies will be careful to pick their customers, to make sure that they have the same values, to make sure that it's good long-term working relationship. I was just interviewed about my 13 years at HubSpot. I'm coming up on my 13-year anniversary at HubSpot, which is amazing to me. First of all, HubSpot changed my life. Everything I learned prior to 2007 right, is dwarfed based on the growth and like the learnings that I've had over the last 13 years. Everything pivoted, not only the philosophies, but the way to run a company, the way to make decisions, the way to scale, the way to grow, the way to lean into culture, just amazing. Right. But also that it made sense to me in the early stages, right? When Brian Halligan, the CEO, and Dharmesh said, no, what we're going to do is we're going to help everybody. I'm like, help everybody? They're like, yeah, that's the way we're going to do it. Anything an old tech company would do where we're going to charge people for maintenance and we're going to make them pay for support, we're going to do it differently. And I'm like, that is amazing. There's not a CEO in America who's not going to buy into that. And it turns out there's not a CEO in a world who doesn't appreciate that ability to get good software, good training, good support to scale their business.
No, and that rings true very much with our experience of working with HubSpot. I mean, it obviously changed our business overall. You know, about 6 years ago, we came on board, and the feeling of they had me for probably nearly a year. I was downloading content, I was talking to people at HubSpot for probably a year before we became a customer, and then obviously subsequently became a partner. But that is still followed through, and actually we see someone like HubSpot as pretty much the supporting backbone of our company. So it is very much something we've been nurtured and educated along the way. So no,
it's a relationship. We love you, Simon. The reason I got up at 5:30 in the morning to be on this Google Hangout is because, number one, we support our partners, right? And we're all in. Anything that you need, we're here. Number two, you're our competitive advantage. When we're selling in some of these locations, we can't walk into a customer's office, and you can. Right? You can be in Northern Ireland. You can be in north of the UK, right? You can go into these manufacturing and industrial companies. You can be our eyes and ears, and that is very, very important. And number three, it's hard work, right? People say, should I use a partner or should I buy direct? And recommendation is always use a partner because, number one, you have the integrations. Number two, you can see a more full level of experience of how you use the HubSpot platform. And number four, you're going to be with them for the long term, right? You got to walk into their office and be held accountable on a regular basis. And that usually means better results.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense to me. So look, I know we've got a few minutes left, Dan, and we've touched on video selling. We love it. We promote it. We help our clients do it. But I suppose briefly, I mean, what is holding people back? What's holding people back from actually jumping on the video sales bandwagon?
It's a couple of things. First of all, they think it's expensive and it's not. Second of all, they think it's hard and it's not. Third of all, they think, oh my goodness, my hair doesn't look good, right? And they're like, no, it doesn't matter, right? The idea is it doesn't have to be perfect. Right? People do videos all the time on their iPhones and things like that. And you just got to get over it. Right? Also, it's like myopically focused on you, and a video email isn't really about you. It's about the value that you can add to the customer. Right? And if you want interesting emails that stand out, that get opened, right? You're going to have to make the move. Now, one or two things are going to happen. You're going to listen to Simon and you're going to say, all right, ping Simon, and you can explain to them the basic ways to get started with email, or you're going to blow it off. If you blow it off, right, then you're going to have to come around to it in 2 years, right, or whenever. You'll just be one of the folks that is in the mainstream majority. Or, right, you can move more quickly because the information and data is already there. Right, we already know that this is a pivot point in the way that we do outreach. And I'm a big believer in the prospecting mode, right? Because it's one of the things I train at HubSpot. Number two, the closing the deal always gets all the glory, but opening the deal is more important. You can't close what you can't open, right? And so the art of opening a deal is even more important in 2020. And opening a deal isn't opening a deal; it's opening a relationship, just like we
a relationship.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And I mean, okay, yeah, it's easier now. The technology's there. It's confidence getting in front of the screen. What should everybody be doing in the first 30 days? If they haven't even started this video selling, where do they start?
Yeah, download a free tool, Loom or Vidyard or Wistia or Video is now in some of the HubSpot free products, right? And just start practicing, right? If you want to send me an email, dtyre@hubspot.com, a video email, I look at them all, right? And I'm happy to give you tips. Number one, you should stand up. Right? I'm a little disappointed you're not standing up, Simon, because I know you're concentrating, but like that's an important thing. Number two, you should smile, right? We want to see like people being friendly, right? Number three, we want to keep it short, 60 seconds, right? Even like Dan Tyre energy, you can't take it for more than 60 seconds. So you want to be very, very succinct. And the goal of a video prospecting email is to start a conversation. Right. So embed your meeting link, your HubSpot meeting link in the video so that people can quickly schedule a meeting so they're ready to go.
Great. Well, look, we're going to put some more information, some links, how to get started. We're going to put links to you, your bio, all the rest of it. You'll be inundated, obviously, with a lot of messages. But look, I want to just say thank you very much, Dan. It's been a pleasure, as always, to talk to you. You always brighten up the day. And you've given us a lot of words of wisdom there. And yeah, we'll talk again, and we really appreciate everything you've done today.
Hey, thanks so much for having me as a guest, Simon. I'm at your service. Anything I could do to help you, to help your clients, to help your prospects, to help your community, right? I got the best job in the world. HubSpot is a great company that's helping the global community work through these issues, and we're at your service. So thank you very much.